business ideas for couples. If you're looking to work together, you've come to the right place. As entrepreneurs and business owners, we know that if we have a clear plan, anything becomes possible. And if you can have a clear plan, a clear process to create that plan, and a way to create clarity with your partner or spouse, you can drive to amazing heights. All right, so if you're a couple, you're looking to work together, so what are the business ideas? There's so many things out there that we want to do or could do. And there's a bunch of different ways to look at it, but the biggest thing to start with is start with the end in mind. So we're going to go through 4 steps. But first, defining what success looks like for you guys as a couple, and what do you want your life to look like? And I'm going to give you a very specific tool that you can use, doesn't cost you anything, that can help you with that. The second is defining the areas of interest and areas of expertise. Start with these things first, okay? The next is make sure you clearly define the roles and the expectations and how you're going to work together. This is a big one. And then lastly, how can you start to reach out to others when you're researching and vetting this idea? Okay, so I started my first of 16 companies when I was 19. I'm 56 now. I have built them, bought them, sold them, and wrecked a couple. But for the most part, I think all but one went really well. In some cases, I work with my spouse. In some cases, I have a business that I work with my family on. But going through this, it adds a whole new layer of dynamics that can be wonderful, but it also can throw a bunch of curveballs. So you need to take this into account when you're starting. So when we start with the idea of what does success look like? And I encourage you to look at it on a holistic level, meaning what does it look like, not just in the financial realm, but also in what's the environment you're choosing to work in. What does it look like for your relationships, not just for your partner, but also for your friends and family? And then how is this going to maximize your time or your resources, your time, your talent, your treasure? So if you go to my website, the Aspiring Solopreneur, aspiringsolopreneur.com, about halfway down the page, there's a tool called the Balance Wheel. You can take this, doesn't cost you anything, and it'll help you define and where you are right now. It'll give you an initial assessment. If you can have this and then have your partner take it as well, you guys can look at those and put them side by side and have a comparison of where do you feel your life is today. Now bear with me, okay? I've done this, I've worked with people all over the world on this. Start with this, and then this way you guys can start to define what is success going to look like in each one of the slices of the pie. It's going to give you immediate results. It'll do a printout with 12 slices of a pie in different ranges depending on how you choose to answer those questions. Now, when you start with this, defining what does success look like for each one of these pieces. So if you're looking at starting a business with your spouse and you think it's all about money, that's great. That may be fantastic. But if your partner isn't on the same page and your partner's thinking it's going to be all about time, you've got a mismatch. And you need to clarify these things in advance, otherwise it's going to be a train wreck just waiting to happen. This will also help you clearly define where the areas you want to work at. So when you're doing this, I'm going to beg and plead, and this is a sexist male thing, but dudes, guys, it isn't always, but it can be both sides. Please don't listen to solve. Listen to be curious. So if your partner has a different rating on a certain slice of the pie, they'll say, no, that's not the way it is, and don't try and solve it. It's like, no, help me understand why. Now, once you start to understand where you are to start with, first step. The second step then is, what would amazing look like in a year with this new business? And this will start to help understanding where it is. Maybe your environment changes. I live at 10,000 feet in the mountains. I feel like the luckiest cat on the planet because I built my life around that. I wanted to define what the life I wanted was first, and then you can be able to come in and step back into what is the areas you want to work towards. So the first thing is to start with that end piece in mind. Be curious. No, listen to be curious, not to solve. Help me understand where your position is. The second then is, what are the areas of expertise that you and your partner have? So what I mean by this is, I can't tell you how many very successful people I've worked with. They come in and say, yeah, I like this, but I want to start a coffee shop. It's like, okay, you are an expert in whatever it may be, some sort of professional service that will pay you $100 to $5,000 an hour. and you want to go work at some place where it's like 20 or 30 hours a week, or excuse me, $20 or $30 an hour for 100 hours a week. It's like, is this really the trade-off you want to make? So think about the areas and the aspects of things that you have expertise in, and I would encourage you to list all those out. Then the second component is, what are the areas that you have interest in? You may be an expert in something and hate it. That's okay. But if you both can do that with your partner and yourself, it's going to start to lay out, okay, well, we've got all these things, and maybe you end up with some unique crossovers. So being that I live right between Aspen, Vale, and Breckenridge, the idea of being able to help people in those communities who have those businesses, well, I like the outdoors, I like the backcountry stuff, this fits really well for me. But it comes down for you to start thinking about what are those areas of expertise that you have. And again, in the book, we talk about this in a bunch of different ways to start looking at those things. There's niches in the riches, meaning you start thinking about, oh, well, we could go do this. If I'm investing in a business and somebody says, oh yeah, we only need 1/10 of 1% of the market, I'm like, oh, they're going to have a nightmare time trying to get into that. But if they say, you know, I use an example in here, it's really silly, but it's a good example. There's somebody who has their office right on Interstate 80, and it says trucker CPA. Okay, that right there says it all. This person is a CPA, and what they do is they do business specifically for truckers, so they're an expert in that space. That is a very tight niche. Every trucker that drives by there can see it. So with that, with a URL underneath it or a phone number, it's the kind of thing that can help. So start thinking about the areas when it comes to building those ideas. Now, expand your thoughts and say, all right, what are those areas that I'm interested in? Number one. Then number two, start to think about who would value those. And there's a tremendous amount of opportunities to do subcontractor work, overflow work. Maybe you're an attorney, maybe you're legal, maybe you're professional service, maybe you're blue collar. Man, I love blue collar businesses because there's opportunities all over. If you're a good, hardworking person, it doesn't matter if you're a plumber, electrician, whatever it may be, you could say, look, we'll do this, and I can actually go in and do high-end work on, I know my neighbor across the street, he gets paid $1,200 a day to do trim carpentry because he's that good and he works on $100 million homes. It's crazy. So first, the next thing is identifying those areas that you have of interest, that you have expertise in, and then start to list out the people who would value those. We still haven't figured out the idea yet, but you're starting to narrow it in and get closer. Now the next step, and this is one of the keys, is as a couple, start to define what the roles are. And what I mean by this is you need to be clear on who's going to be accountable for what. And remember, there's a whole bunch of different steps within the business. And that's why at Aspiring Solopreneur, we have a whole course with support videos all the way through that can help you go through and define how to identify your idea, vet it, test it, then build a full team of advisors without any money while you guys are doing whatever you're doing, and then transition safely so you know, man, this is a no-brainer, we got this. But I'm encouraging you to think about it from this perspective. If you have one person who's great at delivering the product or service, wonderful. Is the other person going to complement that? Is the other person the type of person that says, you know, actually, I like doing the books. I like taking care of the billing. I'll take care of the marketing. I'll handle any of the internal calls. I'll field it up. I'm just going to help the other partner go to their highest and best use, which is getting out there and performing the product or service or task at hand. But clearly identify those, because if you both think you're going to do something, you've got to make sure what are all the other roles in there. And this is very high level because this is a big idea, a big process to go through and do this. But once you start clarifying the roles, we're starting to identify the areas that we want to be, what amazing looks like for us, where can we really be successful? What is our product or service that we love? Start looking at who could be out there. And again, I have very specific questions on how you ask that, and please check out the rest of the videos on this channel, but we talk through all those things. Now, the last piece that I'm going to suggest when you start coming up with different business ideas is if you can start reaching out to other people who may be doing it. Now, a lot of times, this is a mistake that a lot of entry-level entrepreneurs make, is they're afraid of actually reaching out to others and saying, hey, how's this work for you? They're going to be a competition. Yeah, maybe. But remember, the most beautiful sound to an entrepreneur's voice, or to an entrepreneur's ears, is their own voice. So if you can call up an entrepreneur and say, hey, I'm interested in maybe doing what you're doing. I'd love to talk to you about it. Do you have some time? Now, sometimes they're going to say no and they'll be an ass. Let it go. Don't worry about it. But a lot of times they'll be sure. And they will help you get through a lot of the lumpiness that you would go through and evolve on your own. Now, if it's regional and maybe it's locally and you think everybody's going to be uncomfortable with that, okay, fair enough. Doesn't mean you can't reach out to people in another state, another part of the country. But when you start to reach out to even those local people, you may even be able to say, hey, do you have a good conversation, fits, I like this person, they share my values, I share their values, it seems common. It's like, hey, if other work came along, what do you do with your overflow? Or what do you do with the clients that are too big or too small, or maybe aren't their exact niche, but could be yours? It's unbelievable how you can start to create a referral source that you can say thank you in the right ways, whatever's legal, but it'll help build that for you. And you'll help to start spinning into what those different ideas can be. So again, when we're looking at the business ideas for couples, the 4 steps are: number 1, what is defining success for you? Both for you and your partner together, making sure you guys are in crystal clear alignment, lockstep in how you're moving forward. That's the first step. The second is outlining how can we define those areas that we already have expertise and or interest, and making sure then that those integrate with what we want our life to look like, and then who's going to start valuing those services. The next is making sure you define the roles between the 2 partners, who's accountable for what, and then lastly, start to reach out to others. But when you do this, I can promise you, it has never been easier or safer to launch your own private business. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Love for you to subscribe to the channel, check out some of the other videos, and always feel free to reach out to us at aspiringsolopreneur.com. Keep smiling.